Hello, and welcome to this edition of Inside Legal ESG. We are so fortunate to have with us today Taylor Pullins, a partner at White & Case. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you, Pam. It's great to visit with you.
We are so fortunate to have you, and we're excited to hear your perspective on ESG. So let's start. Tell us about your role at White & Case and the type of work you do for clients.
Well, I'm an environmental partner in the Houston office at White & Case. Being in Houston, the center of a lot of the energy, both traditional energy as well as energy transition developments that we see, much of the work I do is for energy-related companies. In addition to being an environmental partner, I lead the firm's global ESG and Sustainability Specialty Practice. You ask about the type of work we do for clients. We support them in a number of things in relation to ESG, and I guess as a principal matter, I would address, ESG allows us to factor in a number of considerations. For example, the environmental considerations and potential impacts from a company's operations, the social considerations, and then corporate governance aspects and how they manage those environmental and social matters. This really speaks to variety of type of legal work. For public companies, for example, you may look at the calendar and what type of disclosure schedule is in place given the time of year. Pam, for example, we are just coming out of the annual report season for most public companies, and making disclosures around climate impacts, around potential risk factors from changes to regulations when it comes to climate change. In particular, the proposed SEC climate rule. That's a specific type of counseling that we have with clients in relation to ESG. We also advise clients in general around voluntary disclosure, and that can be in sustainability reporting. It can be in climate-focused reporting. We also advise clients around onboarding of directors and what is the market perception regarding the importance of having a director or multiple directors with substantial ESG experience, or even more focused, climate experience, and where there may be opportunities to upskill or train directors or offer programs for directors to upskill. Just a wide variety of types of work that I do, that we do at White & Case in this space of ESG. And I think as we continue to talk today, I'll identify some additional specific examples of the types of work.
Wonderful. One of the things that struck me when we had our introductory call is that you have experience serving as in-house counsel at a client organization. So tell us what that was like, and then ultimately what brought you back to private practice.
Well, for just over 3 years, I worked at Noble Energy. I had been in private practice for about 10 and a half years. As I mentioned before, I had a traditional environmental law background, and I had this growing desire to face new opportunities or new challenges, and I felt that when presented with the opportunity to join Noble Energy, it was an exciting time for the business. It was an exciting time in environmental regulation, and in particular with the business, Noble Energy at that time was working on its largest capital project in company history. This was an offshore natural gas development offshore Israel. And so to be part of that had a great appeal to me. So how was it? I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Noble Energy. I joined as a lead EHS lawyer. And what I found certainly at Noble Energy, but in talking with my peers at other companies, there is this recognition within companies that competence, that success kind of yields additional opportunity. And in in my case, what I found was opportunity for increased responsibility over time, to a point that I received the opportunity to manage the corporate legal group. I retained the direct responsibility over environmental health and safety, but also managed M&A, for example, and corporate securities and litigation relating to the company. And that was a great opportunity. An opportunity that I did not foresee, but I'm so grateful for, was, and maybe just to put things into perspective, I joined Noble in late 2017. And at that time, even before joining Noble in private practice, I was working with public companies, not only around disclosure of climate risks on Form 10K, so their annual report, but also this growing interest of shareholders in climate commitments and climate disclosure. And so I joined Noble Energy in this environment of shareholder engagement around climate issues. And because of my prior experience, I was quite quickly brought in on those discussions. And that was, visibility to discussions that I just didn't have in private practice, meaning, talking with institutional shareholders about their concerns, about what they'd like to see, talking with even very small shareholders about a proposal that they raise, meeting with them. And I just really enjoyed that. And apparently, the degree to which I enjoyed it became obvious to some people at the company, because I was later asked during my time at Noble to serve as director of sustainability and to oversee the development and issuance of a climate resilience report, to oversee the kind of upgrading or addition of standards, SASB in particular, to the sustainability reporting that Noble Energy had been doing for, over a decade, but incorporating additional and more recent standards. So, just a great opportunity that I certainly didn't have before me in like the position description when I joined the company, or was being recruited by the company. But it became just an expanding opportunity, and an opportunity for me to better understand the business, for me to better understand how investors view the business, how they view the importance of how a company can communicate its objectives when it comes to ESG performance.
So it sounds like it was a great time, and obviously you did great work. So what pulled you back to private practice?
Well, initially, the pull back to private practice was triggered by a major transaction involving Noble Energy and Chevron Corporation. So in July of 2020, I, on the Noble Energy side, led the negotiation of a merger agreement, working with outside counsel. And that merger agreement was signed in July, and eventually the transaction closed in October, wherein Noble Energy became a wholly owned subsidiary of Chevron. Think about where we were in 2020. There was already so much uncertainty about life in general. The world had just changed so dramatically in a relatively short period of time, from March to, at the time that we signed the deal, July, and then closed the deal October, that I found myself in this place of professional uncertainty. Like, what should I do? That's what I was asking myself. And the point of my career in which I found myself, I took a step back and thought, what is the next step in my trajectory to where I want to go? And I'm very grateful for the inbound calls actually that I received from now partners of mine here at White & Case, asking what my plans were, expressing interest in meeting. And by meeting, all of my interviews were done virtually, which was the norm back then, but still felt different.
Yes, that's right.
Thankfully, I knew from years of practicing together, I knew some of the recent laterals to White and Case, and so at least I had that as a data point. But then so many people I was meeting only virtually. So to answer your question, I came back to private practice because I felt that in years coming out of, although it was unclear how soon we would come out of the pandemic, I felt that the variety that I would see as a partner at White and Case when it came to transactions, when it came to broader progress around ESG, that the time was right for me to work with a variety of clients, a variety of industries, and that I would learn at an accelerated pace if I had the reps, as we call it, the deal flow. And so I joined White and Case at the start of 2021 with that objective to continue to learn.
And you mentioned early on that you are chairing the ESG Specialty Practice group at White and Case. Tell me when that got started and how it is positioning itself to work with clients.
It's pretty common to read in sustainability reports of companies in general about companies being on a journey when it comes to their sustainability improvements, right? And so I think law firms as well are on that journey. And I joined at an advantageous time as to when or where White and Case was on its journey. So joining, my arrival in January of 2021 was followed by the standing up of a group, an internal group, core team of partners. There were 12 of us, which we in White and Case speak called an interest group, where we were developing, where should we go in the way of externally facing client work opportunities, thought leadership. What do we need to do internally? I also want to point out that you don't arrive to a productive point of standing up a group without years of thought, years of consideration, and really support from the top of an organization. And that doesn't only apply to law firms. Those principles of understanding what is material to the business and direction and pace of change and ultimately buy-in from the top of the organization. So I'm grateful that I joined at the time I did, and that work had momentum already going. So I joined this group of core partners in March of 21. And as we met together, we observed what I would say that something more formal was warranted, something more formal that was externally facing. And so in early October of 2021, we announced this group, an externally facing group that I was asked to lead. And so I identified in this group core partners and objectives, and we developed a business plan with the support of those partners as to what we wanted to present to our executive committee and receive their support and direction on. So, the timing question, I think I've answered, that it was 2021 that we stood up this group. Now, I'll also point out that more recently, as in the last 6 months, also based on just market understanding, we have signaled to the market even greater formality and internal buy-in by calling this a specialty practice now. So no longer an interest group, but a specialty practice.
And presumably lawyers from all different walks of life, or lawyers from all different types of practice expertise, are included in this ESG group, specialty practice.
Yes, thankfully. Yes. And that was something early on that the inputs of a variety of people are so valuable. I knew before I joined White and Case that I was looking at a law firm with a global footprint, in more than 35 countries, more than 40 offices, and with, substantive experience in key geographies, including substantive experiences in, for example, business and human rights, in supply chain, in trade, in public company work, and more in my bailiwick, environment and climate change considerations. And so it's so important to be able to bring to the table for our clients people with not only years of experience in those more specialized areas, but experience relevant to the jurisdictions where they operate, and people who are keeping up with market trends. And so I'm grateful that I can call upon my disputes attorneys who represent companies in human rights disputes, for example, or companies working on their policies around the Modern Slavery Act, or the UN Global Compact and commitments made around that, so that are non-environmental, that I can draw upon those resources, learn from them, and I think it really brings a nice offering for our clients. We debated for some time whether there's such a thing as an ESG lawyer. And initially coming in, I thought, well, I don't think that anybody has the capability to cover all the bases across all geographies. And I continue to feel that way. What I try to do as leader of this group is facilitate the right teams and bring those right teams to our clients, and through that, best support our clients.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. If we could ever find all the areas of expertise that's required in ESG in a single person, I think that would be a miracle. So you talked a little bit about the journey in forming the practice group and serving your clients. What about the journey for White and Case itself? Because one of the things I've seen in the marketplace is increasing pressure from clients, or I should say increasing expectations of law firms by their clients with their own ESG journey. Since law firms are part of the scope 3 of client calculations and metrics, and part of their measurements of their progress, their supply chain, I think law firms are seeing more and more pressure and are starting their own ESG journey. So I would love to hear about White and Case's program. Do you have a separate team working internally? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Let me first share with you that as part of my review of law firms, or more generally options for what my next career step would be, back in late 2020, early 21, I looked into what White and Case and what some other law firms and companies were doing around sustainability, just to get a sense and to benchmark to a degree, to see how current reporting is, to see what they do internally versus what they resource through third-party consultants. And what I was, and one of the factors that led me to be excited about White and Case was reading the environmental sustainability report that had been prepared for a number of years and was current. That was important to me, and that reflected commitments and kind of spoke about continuous improvement, and even set out objectives met and objectives to be met or to be pursued. I was impressed by that. As I've been here now, and in particular now leading the ESG and Sustainability Specialty Practice, I have greater appreciation, greater visibility of those internal efforts. So to specifically answer your question, we have a committee that is led from the top called our Global Citizenship Committee.
Mhm.
And our sustainability performance and commitments is one aspect overseen by our Global Citizenship Committee. Environmental aspects of our sustainability efforts are directly managed by a global environmental sustainability manager, which I think is so awesome that here we have a non-lawyer, one with technical environmental consulting experience in multiple jurisdictions, who directly manages those sustainability efforts and has support from an environmental sustainability committee, which includes lawyers and non-lawyers, and includes members of our global strategy team and members of business services, business development, and as well as representation by leadership, by executive leadership at the firm. We have a specific environmental sustainability policy for which I can take no personal credit. It was in place before I joined. We report on performance. Our environmental sustainability policy is available online. It talks about nothing that should surprise anybody, but it talks about our commitment to compliance with regulatory requirements, our engagement in voluntary practices as well, our commitment around implementing sustainable waste management practices across the firm, minimizing quantity of waste, increasing the amount of waste we recycle. We report on, well, actually, I'm speaking to the policy right now. We have a commitment to identify and implement measures to continuously improve in these areas. And a key area that kind of speaks to me personally, given that it's an area on which I advise clients quite often, is around effectively managing our carbon emissions. You talked about inquiries from clients and how we as a law firm need to recognize that we are included in that group of indirect emissions of our clients. We're within their scope 3. And so our environmental sustainability talks about identifying ways to improve our emissions profile and performance, and work with our suppliers and employees to promote and improve these efforts. If you go to, I haven't been to all but, so let me rephrase that. I've been to 9 of our offices since joining White & Case, and seeing the degree of effort to minimize waste, to make recycling so easy, composting easy. There's variation depending on which office you're talking about. But for example, here in Houston, the elimination of single-use plastics was a really good milestone. Now, in other offices in London, that was probably old news that those were cycled out. But for us in Houston, it's like, let's do this. We can do this. And that all ties back to our environmental sustainability policy and efforts flagged by our global environmental sustainability manager. And then based on that policy, Pam, we track and we report on such things as percentage of energy use coming from renewable energy. This is an annual reporting that we make. And I want to get to your point of inquiries from clients, even questionnaires from clients around our emissions performance. So another kind of process that is followed, the origination of which I take no personal credit because it predates my time here at the firm. We are currently working on our 5th carbon emission assessment with a third-party service provider called Greenstone. You're probably familiar with Greenstone.
Yes, I am.
Where we report out on our carbon emissions, on our carbon emissions reduction efforts, on our evaluation of science-based targets and how those would be applied. We have and we appreciate the receipt of inquiries from clients asking us to work responsibly
Mhm.
for these efforts. Scope 3 is a challenge for everybody when it comes to precision,
Yes.
and recognizing that. Well, let me back up. The questionnaires that we have received from clients relating to our emissions performance, if they don't already factor in that we report on our total emissions and our efforts to increase renewable energy resource, for example, we make sure that we bring that to our clients' attention. And in most cases, our clients are already sensitized and appreciative of that broader reporting. As a result, the questionnaires focus on our emissions specific to either a client matter or a client group.
Right.
And this is where I get into the challenge of precision when it comes to calculating emissions. What percentage of our total emissions go toward, a client group and our work on behalf of that client group? Maybe with the exception of some increased precision when it comes to emissions from travel on behalf of those clients. You're getting into a world of assumptions and calculations, and a percentage of total time spent. How challenging can it be to address how much electricity in our Houston office should be attributed to one client group among hundreds of clients that we serve here. So
Right.
We appreciate that we receive these questionnaires. It gets us thinking, and even accelerates our thought around how our clients are working toward improving their own emissions performance, both direct, meaning scope 1, both indirect, that relates to power that is supplied to their operations, meaning scope 2, and then that more challenging one to calculate and compare, being scope 3. We do engage with our clients. We provide responses. We meet with them in relation to these questionnaires, and I involve our environmental sustainability manager and others on the environmental sustainability committee in those discussions, as well as the key relationship partners. And how important is that for the key relationship partners, many of whom might be a capital markets attorney or a pure M&A play attorney, for them to have their eyes opened to how this is of increasing importance to their clients.
Yes. And I completely appreciate the difficulty of getting into the nitty-gritty when the clients are asking what percentage of your greenhouse gas emissions is attributable to, our client group or the work you do for us. Even having your total greenhouse gas emissions measured is a leadership position in the legal profession. I can tell you that there aren't very many law firms that can say they've measured their carbon output. So having total emissions and having that progress measured over the last number of years should put you in very good position to have these conversations with your clients.
Thank you, Pam, and I agree, and take pride in that point. And really, what excites me the most about having those emission assessments completed now 4 times and working on a 5th is the key findings. And those findings allow us to assess what we have accomplished on the journey and what is reasonable as a next step in different categories, and supplies the impetus. I was going to say motivation, but probably impetus for identifying other opportunities for improvement. And I use the example of, in Houston, we looked around and saw that, and in part this was probably a result of COVID. We saw single-use plastics all over the place, and an opportunity to reduce those and even eliminate those single-use plastics, and feel that by so doing, a step in the right direction. That, that type of finding or observation can then lead to action and can lead to improvement. And certainly around carbon emissions, the findings from those previous reports are informing us on our current process.
Mm-hmm. So we are almost out of time. I want to ask you two final questions. What advice would you offer to law firms who might just be getting started on their ESG journey?
I would at first commend them for starting, and they probably should take a step back and give attribution to the efforts that led to them more formally starting a journey, because it's a great leadership step to validate and to support getting involved and seeking improvement, both internal improvement and improvement in the services that we provide our clients. I would advise or suggest that engagement with their people, both internal as well as their clients, is so key for establishing or benefiting from culture and making sure that there's buy-in. And I've seen companies that have rolled out sustainability reports that have been accurate and representative or reflective of good progress, but they have not resourced or engaged enough with their people in that process to a degree that it's an announcement. We have a sustainability report. It's great, but it's not as resonating in the company as it could have been. And then I've seen other cases where broader engagement led to just a greater sense of buy-in. And so I would encourage people to engage with their firms, to engage with their people, listen to what the people, meaning clients and internally, what they believe is purposeful when it comes to a law firm's ESG efforts. And it might be influenced by where the law firm operates and what type of law firm. Are they, a more specialized boutique, or are they more full service? Are they regional? Are they global? And a key point that I would share as a learning, having been through this process and are continuing on this journey, is involve associates, involve younger colleagues, whether they be lawyers or non-lawyers. Tap into that source of interest, that source of excitement around these topics, even importance of these topics. We identified in around the time that we went to the market with this more formalized group in October of 21, we identified that we had a lot to learn from our younger colleagues, and that we could engage with them and bring them along. And that was even a key objective that we flagged in our business plan, was to engage with our younger colleagues. And the way we phrased it is, we want to develop a pipeline of associate talent. And this will help define and grow our position, our capabilities in the firm. So I would just pass along that learning. We stood up or created an ESG associate working group, is what we call it. And this associate working group is co-chaired by two associates, one senior associate, one more junior associate, and they report into our core team of ESG and sustainability partners, and they participate on our frequent calls. And this makes sure that we are feeding that pipeline by involving them in the matters, involving them in our thought leadership, getting input. My advice to law firms would be to consider doing the same, to have associate participation, associate buy-in, and I think they'll benefit from it.
And to your point earlier about it's fine to publish a great sustainability report and then publicize it. But if your clients comment to your lawyers, oh, I read your sustainability report, and the lawyers don't know anything about it, that's not a good sign. So yes, absolutely, you have to involve the whole firm on these initiatives. Okay, final question. If I can convince you to come back to this podcast a year from now, what will have changed? Or perhaps more importantly, what do you hope will have changed?
Pam, I hope to come back. I hope to visit with you again on these topics. I hope that when it comes to White & Case's internal efforts, that this ongoing assessment of our emissions performance shows continued progress. I believe it will. Our ongoing assessment of the Science-Based Target Initiative, I hope that yields commitments, and that through the establishment of commitments, we will see additional progress, even acceleration of progress. In the market, I believe what we'll see is a lot of activity, increasing activity around carbon credit transactions, both and maybe primarily in the voluntary markets. This is an area of increasing interest and activity where, again, the impetus for this is the principle of sustainability, the making of net zero commitments, and the recognition on the journey that we can reduce emissions to a point, but we need high quality carbon credits to offset emissions to work toward net zero. Mm-hmm. And so the development of those projects, facilitated in part and in some cases in large part by government incentives through, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act, but I'm not talking only about the US, but government incentives to enhance the availability, the supply of quality carbon credits, because right now I see an imbalance in demand versus supply of high quality credits. I believe that we'll see improvement there, and boy, do I hope that's the case, because I am so appreciative to work with clients who have made commitments and strive to offset and strive to reduce their emissions, and they are doing so voluntarily. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about a voluntary market, companies do not want a situation where, even with the best of intentions, they find themselves actually having a negative hit to their reputation because of, for example, association with a carbon credit project that was not appropriately capitalized, and therefore the credits really didn't yield, or something that may have been alleged to have been caught up in greenwashing. So I hope that we see enhancing of projects, additional activity. I hope that we see, and I'm quite confident that we will, in the US, finalized disclosure rules around climate change for public companies. I believe that that's an area where regulation will help accelerate comparability and ultimately performance when it comes to public company performance around climate.
I completely agree. And I also hope for those things. And I absolutely intend to invite you back a year from now, and we will see if we were right. Thank you so much, Taylor. Your advice today and your insights into what it was like to be in-house, how you're building your practice at White & Case, and actually how White & Case is one of the leaders in ESG in its own operations is really inspiring. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you for helping us tell the story of the journey that we're on and the desire to improve further. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
It's my pleasure, Taylor. Thank you.